So, welcome to Blend with Me. In Blending with Me, we talk to people from the wonderful world of learning, people that we've always wanted to talk to, and people that can teach us something, people that might know more than we do. I'm Michael Klonhammer, Chief of Things at Learning Stone, the technology company that loves people. And joining me is Jenni Miller from Management Dynamics. Jenni is client at Learning Stone, former learning specialist and executive at Vodafone, and that was in both the UK and New Zealand. And Jenni is founder of Management Dynamics from London. In October, Jenni posted that she had delivered 47 hours of online workshops, 113 hours of content. Jenni, you received a rating of 4.5 out of 5, and you did 4 hours of face-to-face work. Welcome, Jenni Miller. Thanks for joining us. Those are amazing numbers. Can you tell me a little bit about those 4 hours?
Hardly anything, isn't it? Very little face-to-face work happened last year, and the year before that, as you can probably imagine. Might have a little something to do with the pandemic. So, prior to COVID, I reckon about 95% of our business.
Okay, and where were you during those 4 hours?
Where was I personally?
Yes.
I don't think it was. I must say, all that work that happened in October, I was not personally delivering myself.
Of course. Okay. You didn't actually see a client in the whole of October.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't actually tell you exactly where we were in October for those 4 hours, but probably delivering a team workshop, I should imagine, somewhere around the world.
Great. Before we continue, can you tell me a little bit about your background? We're going to be talking about the international world of blended learning. You've spent some time in other countries as well, and tell me about Management Dynamics.
Yeah, so Management Dynamics is 5 years young. We celebrated our 5th birthday last year. It grew out of, so my business partner is Alison Grieve, and I set it up 5 years ago in her back garden. We decided we wanted to create something that was bigger than just us. We both had our own individual freelancing businesses for quite some time and wanted to create something bigger than that.
Right.
And wanted to have more impact and create a global business as well. So that global piece is really important to both of us. I think we both describe ourselves as global citizens. So the international element is really important.
Now I must say, once I bumped into you on LinkedIn, and then I was curious about your company, and I looked at your site, and then I noticed there's no office.
No,
there's no office.
No,
but there never has been.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
And possibly never will be. Who knows? Like we're open to changing our minds on this, but we've never needed one.
Maybe just to clarify, that's before the pandemic, right?
Yeah. When we started 5 years ago, we said, let's not have an office. Let's be a virtual business.
Okay.
Let's practice what we preach, actually, which is a lot of what we teach is about leading remotely and leading virtually. So let's practice that.
What about your colleagues? Do they miss having an office? I mean,
I know I miss at the moment going into an office, not having my own office, but seeing colleagues. When we spoke the other day, I said, "You're in an office." I got so excited, didn't I? And I do envy people being with other people for working. A lot of the work that we're doing at the moment is virtual. I will bite your hand off if you ask me to do a face-to-face
So what changed?
workshop.
What changed for you as a company during the pandemic? I mean, tell me a little bit about the business and things that changed.
We had to pivot the business completely. We had to flip it on its head. 95% of our work before the pandemic was face-to-face.
Right.
That work turned off overnight, as soon as the pandemic hit. And so we had to work with our clients to help them to turn the learning that they were doing, the leadership development, the team, whatever it was, into virtual learning. And 100% of our clients kept their programs with us as a result of that. So
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But tell me, I mean, you've been working with us for a bit longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Were you traveling all the time before?
Yeah, we were doing a lot of travel.
Right, because maybe you can just tell me. I mean, we've agreed we won't mention all your very exciting clients, which is a pity, but believe me, they're impressive. But tell me a little bit about where are they? And
they're all over the world, honestly. They're mostly multinational, kind of global organizations with offices in many locations, teams working across locations as well. So not even pre-pandemic, they wouldn't have been working together face to face anyway. Some of them,
Yeah.
some of them
Okay.
would, but very much that international focus. So all continents. And we, before the pandemic, would generally travel to them.
Right.
Now that's become much more tricky. So now we have, our business model has shifted to having more people locally to be able
Okay.
to, serve clients on the ground,
Ah, right,
basically.
right. So
Yeah.
so you're still trying to see people physically, but you're actually having to do that with different people from your side.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
But can you tell me a little bit about, I mean, so you picked up on blended learning quite
Mm.
early, being a remote company. Um, how did that start, and how did that change?
It started probably about very early into our growth as a business, actually, probably in our first year. It was something we identified as being really important and a growth area for learning just generally.
Right.
Delivering virtual workshops was an important part of our strategy already. And so we
Yeah.
weren't, some businesses out there, some learning businesses who were quite shocked by the pandemic. They hadn't done any
Yeah.
virtual learning prior to that, but we knew how to do it. Like, we thought we did pretty well.
Yeah.
Our clients certainly told us that we did. But prior to the pandemic, we were trying to convince our clients to embrace virtual. When the pandemic hit, of course, it was kind of like, trying to
Right.
convince them to do stuff face to face was hard. So, it was kind of the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
And just
it's
to
grown through the
clarify
pandemic.
for our listeners,
Mm.
you're doing leadership tracks internationally with blended learning. Can you
Yeah.
just describe that a bit? Because actually,
Mm.
I mean, I'm super enthusiastic about blended learning, and sometimes, and I've done management teams myself, and it's sometimes a bit exciting because they're busy people and not always tech savvy. How does that work for you? I mean,
So a typical program, well, we create bespoke programs. So there's no kind of program that we're trying to sell to our clients. We're
right?
designing specifically to their needs. And a typical program might be something like a 9-month program. And
Yeah.
whereas before the pandemic, we might have done 3 modules of 3 days over that 9-month period, maybe with some virtual workshops in between, maybe with some virtual coaching in
Yeah.
between and things like that. Now we're doing much more of the opportunity to get to face with the participants is much more limited. So we might be doing 26 virtual workshops over a 9-month period,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
we might cluster into modules.
But
And
they're busy people. Is
yeah,
this in the evening? How do you organize that? I mean,
no, it's in their working day,
okay.
usually. Depending on the client, however, that working day could be quite long for some of
Of
them.
course. Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
had clients for whom a 7 a.m. start works the best for the time zones that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And actually, if you think about it, we're probably doing 2-hour modules each time or 2-hour workshops. That's much easier to fit in than a 3-day offsite.
Right.
So
Right.
actually, I think that is often working better for a lot of the participants, the shorter, sharper workshops
Right.
over
Right.
the same length of time,
Yeah.
is working really well with their day jobs.
And what do you do online for them? I mean, what?
We facilitate workshops,
Yeah.
so we try and replicate what we would be doing in a face-to-face classroom,
Okay, and that's
but in a live
the
online
synchronous
environment.
online moments. But
Yeah,
what's the asynchronous stuff that you're doing? I mean, you're posting material. What is
exactly.
it?
Yeah, it's curated content, so it would be stuff. So we believe that learning doesn't start and end in the classroom. The
Right.
live,
Yeah.
either
Yeah. Yeah.
face-to-face or live online classroom that we would have. It starts before that, in terms of
Okay.
preparation. So the pre-reading that we ask people to do, or the tasks that we ask them to do beforehand, it happens, in between workshops in
Right.
how they apply what they've learned and reflect back on it. And then it happens after the program as well. So
Okay.
we often give clients access to Learning Stone for 12 months after the program, so they
Okay.
can go back and review content, read
Just to
more
ask you
about
about
the
that pre bit. I always
Mm.
so I'm a big fan of doing intakes and things ahead of time, but with senior level people, it's kind of exciting to get them motivated before
Mm.
something actually starts. How do you deal with that?
You have to do it quite carefully because you don't want to overload them with too much stuff, but you
Right.
want them to come ready to learn and also to have got the same level of understanding about a topic to fully engage with it.
Right.
So less is more, but
Okay.
less really targeted pieces seems to be the kind of a sweet spot.
And do you use? I mean, how do you connect with them just to start off with, I mean, how's this? What's the starting point? I mean, you call their boss and say they have to read this, or I mean, what's the deal?
It really depends on the client, honestly, because
Yeah.
so much of what we do is so bespoke. So
Right.
we're creating whatever we think is needed in order to create the outcome that the client's looking for. So if the
Right.
client's looking for a really big behavior change, then the effort that we put in up front and the pre-work and engaging with their line managers, maybe even more senior leaders than that in the
Right.
business, that we put more effort into that accordingly.
Right.
So it is very different depending on
Do
the
you
client.
reward them? I mean,
Yeah, well, yeah, again, it depends.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think what you need to be really careful of is not being juvenile with it. So
yeah,
it's about treating them as adult learners,
yeah.
self-motivated. And, most people who are on our programs are there because they want to be there.
Oh, how
So that
nice for you.
I know it's lovely, isn't it? We very rarely get people who don't want to be part of it.
Okay, that's great.
And if we do, it's hard work to try and engage them.
Yeah.
It's so much easier when you've got learners who are, naturally engaged. And so, they are self-motivated people.
Right. And what's the sweet spot in the size of, we're talking about leadership, like, or let's talk about senior people in general. I mean, what's the size of it?
Size of a program or cohort on a program is probably between about 8 and 16 people.
Okay.
Generally.
Okay.
That seems to be about the sweet spot. We do bigger programs than that, and we do smaller programs than that as well.
Right.
But the sweet spot, about 12 is a really nice number on a leadership program.
So I have lots of questions, but just let me take a moment. If anybody wants to ask some questions, we have a Q&A function. So you can put in questions there. You can also throw things into the chat that we can come back to you later. So you can do that as well, but please ask questions. Jenni's here for you now. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about, I mean, I'm really impressed that of course you were experienced when you started the company, so that probably explains a little bit that you've managed to extend internationally. But can you tell me a little bit about how did that happen? I mean, do you have salespeople flying out? How you have like a show, blended learning show? We're going to come. How did that happen?
Our growth,
I know people are dying to know this because there are a lot of businesses struggling, right? So please tell them.
I was just thinking, as you said, have you got a load of salespeople? If only we had a big bunch of salespeople out there selling for us. Now, my business partner and I are the salespeople in the business, as well as setting the direction and so on. Maybe at some point we'll get to the point where we are big enough to hire salespeople too. Growth has pretty much been organic through referral, which is obviously the best kind of marketing. When one of your clients is going, work with these guys because they've done a great job for us, that's where we want to get to with our clients. And so that's pretty much been our secret to our success so far, if you like.
Okay, so I mean, scaling with people, of course, is super hard, but with technology, it can be hard as well. Has blended learning helped you to scale internationally?
Oh yeah, hugely. I mean, I think whilst the pandemic's been incredibly hard, and it was really hard for us as a business as well, particularly in the first year, I think it's also had a silver lining, which has been the explosion of virtual learning.
Right.
And that has enabled us to work smarter, to have a broader, more global reach throughout the business, throughout the world. I think, and to, I think, create better learning actually as well. I think that blended is the answer, and it has been for quite some time. The pandemic,
I'm going to quote you on that. It sounds great. Great.
Exactly. The pandemic's just accelerated it. Something that was already happening, it just accelerated it. I don't know, 100 times over.
Okay.
So yes,
and have you managed to get people in other? So you're working with new people as well. So are you training them as? I mean, how do you train them? Because you can't fly over to them, right? So it's pretty hard work.
Yeah, we work virtually 100% of the time. This is my office, this virtual world. When I see people now, in person, like, oh my goodness, you are a real person. You're not just pixels on my screen or a bot. That's, so, this is how we do business. And yes, we did a lot of that before 2 years ago, but not on the scale that we're now doing it.
Okay. So, are you actually developing training for trainers?
We do some train the trainer, so we do certifications, for example. So we
Okay.
partner with Corn Ferry. We offer their
Right.
certifications for them. We have open programs for those
Can
certifications.
you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about them? I don't
yeah.
think a lot of people know them that
They're
might be listening.
a global resourcing company that
Right.
has grown massively over the last few years. They bought Hay Group recently, it was in the last few years.
Yeah.
And so they've got a lot of wonderful, like gold standard, best of the best assessments. So if
Right.
you want to assess leadership potential, their assessment, without a doubt, is the best on the market. They've also got a wonderful gold standard 360-degree feedback tool as well.
Right.
So
So
beautiful
I know
product.
you're combining that with Learning Stone. How does that work?
We use Learning Stone to support the certifications that we run. So there's a lot of materials that
Yeah.
come with a certification for a Corn Ferry product. And so we host all those materials on the Learning Stone platform, and participants can engage with the learning there as
Okay.
part of their
Okay.
pre-work.
And does that do you use certifications internationally as well? Is that something that helps you?
Yeah, very much so. So again, it's all of the certifications that we deliver at the moment. They might go back to some face-to-face at some point, but it's all virtual. And so that we're reaching right across the globe, which is really lovely.
Okay, so now tell me, thanks for all this great information. But what do you expect in like 2 years' time? Let's just assume that it's going to change to the better a little bit, just for
Let's
this
hope. It'd be
conversation.
nice, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It does feel like the beginning of the end, I have to say, of the pandemic. So
yeah.
hope is there for me anyway.
Okay, so
Two
so
two
so
years
what
time? Yeah,
management dynamics? Let's not go 5 years.
yeah,
It's just too far away these
yeah.
days. Two years.
2 years, and what will be management planners be doing?
Yes.
I think we'll be doing more of the same. So I think we have growth aspirations,
Right.
and I think that we will be working with more clients on bigger projects
Okay.
in more countries. And I think this percentage of face to face and virtual, it might shift a little bit back to more face to face.
Sure.
But I actually think the virtual world's here to stay.
Yeah.
So, and I
Yeah.
hope it is. I hope it is, because I know it's really effective.
Okay.
As much as I love seeing people face to face, and I know a lot of my colleagues do too, I think I also know how effective that kind of learning is. The
So
one place
so for you
where,
as an international company,
yeah,
you think it's a positive thing.
yeah, I
Okay.
think
And
so.
a lot of people are talking about hybrid
Mm,
situations. Like,
yeah,
is that something you're looking at? I
I
mean,
think we're already there. Honestly, I think that what we know at the moment is that we have to have a huge amount of flexibility in how we deliver what we're
right.
delivering.
Well, hybrid as in
Yeah,
partly really face to face and partly synchronous in, say, Zoom or Teams or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think we're already there. I think that's what we're delivering right now.
Okay.
But having flexibility in that. So if having flexibility to know that at the moment in the pandemic, people might be sick and therefore we might need to change dates. That's
Sure.
much easier in a virtual world than it ever
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
face
Yeah.
to face. But also, if we're going in and delivering something face to face, being prepared to shift and move that virtually if needed. So having that agility is really, really crucial for our clients.
Okay, Jenny,
Yeah.
this was really wonderful. Let me just close with so you've gone through quite a learning curve. But still you're only 5 years down the road. Can you just give viewers some tips on, like, let's say they're only starting with blended learning. How do you think they should approach the whole growth path?
The growth path, I think, learn as much as you can. I think this is something I'm realizing, is that in order to engage learners, you need to keep being different.
Right,
Even I feel that sometimes the Zoom world can feel a bit the same, and so I think
right.
that the more interest you can bring in, the more new technology, more
Yep.
new different ways of presenting learning, doing things differently
Okay.
in a different way that they're doing in their day jobs. I think that's the important thing. It needs to be interesting and relevant.
Okay. Okay.
And so keeping up with what's going on out there, I think, is really, really crucial. And
And
staying ahead of
are you
things.
doing all this yourself, or are you
Yeah.
actually employing new type of people?
It's a bit of both. So it's having new skill sets and different ways of thinking. But as
Yeah.
much as that, it's also about having the technology and the ways of delivering that learning that keeps people engaged.
Okay.
Do we just use slides, for example, or is there a different way of presenting the information in such a way that it's visually pleasing and but stimulating and different?
Right.
Or do we just use annotate on a Zoom call, or do we use a tool like Mural, which is that kind of interactive whiteboard type idea?
Great. Right. Yeah.
All of
Brilliant.
this, I think, is really crucial. So
Yeah.
staying ahead of that, and then not assuming that Mural or something along those lines is the answer. What else is there? What else is there? And so
Great.
on.
Great. Great. Well, Jenni, thanks so much for all these insights. We will be posting this video online with lots of links to all your work. So if people want to find out which secret clients we didn't talk about, you might be able to find them on the Management Dynamics sites. Thank you very much for this, and hope to speak to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.